Hello and welcome to my channel if you're new here, and welcome back if you've been here before. If you haven't yet, if you could please click the subscribe button down below and click the little bell next to it, and that way, subscribing is free and it helps my channel, and if you click the little bell, YouTube will let you know when I have new videos up, so that way you'll get a little notification from them. And also if you could click the like button on this video if you do like it, because that tells YouTube it's a good video and to recommend it to other people as well. In this video, I'm going to be doing a review of this book here. It's Congregation for the Clergy, Directory for the Life and Ministry of Priests. And I got into reading this book because I figured it was good to know what the jobs and responsibilities are for priests. I mean, growing up, there's that assumption that I always had about, oh, well, what you see priests doing, that's what their job is. But then after reading Infiltration and seeing a variety of priests, I mean, I've seen a whole spectrum, from the really liberal ones who would walk around dressed in normal civilian clothing that you might otherwise not know that they're a priest, versus the ones that are very pious, wear cassocks, have a very clear devotion to Mary through the Rosary and Eucharistic adoration. There's a whole spectrum of them. And so I kind of got interested in this book after reading Infiltration and School of Darkness by Bella Dodds and the AA 1025. And I have to say, this book was definitely not a disappointment in any way. I would really recommend this book to a whole slew of people, really. If you want to know just personally what the jobs and duties of a priest are. So basically, any Catholic really should read this book, and especially if you want to become a priest. If you feel a calling to the priesthood, this book is a must-have. There were so many things that as I read it, I thought, well, it seemed like a no-brainer to me. But then I haven't seen that kind of stuff in a lot of priests. A few priests that come to mind that are just dead on what this book says they should be are Father Altman, Father Richard Howman, Father Bill Casey. As a bishop, Bishop Strickland. There's a few others, but they're not coming to mind at the moment. So that just gives you a rough idea, a ballpark really, of what examples of people who follow what's in this book are. And ironically enough, there are actually a lot of footnotes in this book and references in this book from John Paul II's post-synodal apostolic exhortation, Pastoris Dabo Vobis, and there's also a lot of references to Vatican II and the documents from that. I mean, a lot. So whenever we get this impression that Vatican II just really loosened stuff up, oh boy, if you read this book, you'll see where that is definitely being twisted and misused. And it brings to mind when Bishop Barron, when there was the issue over the St. Junipero Serra statues, when he said, oh, well, that's the ladies' job to get out there and protect it. He claimed Vatican II as his evidence of why it wasn't his job to do anything, why it's the ladies' job. And according to this book, he's dead wrong. He apparently needs to go back and read some documents, because no, according to this book, it's the bishop's job to lead the priest and direct the priest, and it's the priest's job to lead the people, not the other way around. In fact, there was one point in this book where it talked about the major responsibility for evangelization falls on the priest. It's the priest's job to evangelize the people. Evangelization is a job that belongs primarily to the priest. Not that we as laity aren't responsible for it too, because we are, but the biggest responsibility for that falls on the priest. The bishops have a responsibility to the priests to lead the priests and guide them, because they're higher up. They're like supposed to basically be, sort of spiritual fathers to the priests and lead them along the way. That's why they're bishops. There was a lot of really good stuff in this book, and I really did enjoy reading it. And it's honestly only about 100 pages long. But the funny thing is that it was so, I wouldn't say intense, but the information in it, I wanted to make sure I read slowly and absorbed it. And so that's why it took me a little bit longer. That, and I'm, in my 3rd trimester, so therefore everything is taking me just a little bit longer now. So stuff that wasn't taking me as long to read before, I was really focusing on paragraphs and reading some of them twice just because, well, my concentration hasn't been quite there as it usually is. So by all rights, this will probably be my last book review for a little bit. I doubt that I'm gonna get another one in before the baby's born. And then once he's born, it'll probably be a little while before I can get another one in because I'm familiar with this at this point. You get brain fog after you have a baby. So chances are it'll probably take a little while after the baby's born before I get into doing another book review. But there are a few things in here that just really caught my attention that I wanted to bring out to you guys. In his fidelity and service to the authority of his bishop, he lives the communion called for by the practice of his priestly ministry. For the pastors with more experience, it is easy to confirm the need to avoid any form of subjectivism in his ministry and adhere with responsibility to pastoral programs. Besides being an expression of maturity, such adhesion contributes to the building of that unity in the communion which is indispensable for the work of evangelization. Now here's one of the areas that caught my attention that I thought was really interesting. It's on functionalism. It says, pastoral charity faces the danger today especially of being emptied of its meaning through so-called functionalism. It is not rare, in fact, to perceive, even in some priests, the influence of an erroneous mentality which reduces the ministerial priesthood to strictly functional aspects. To merely play the role of the priest, carrying out a few services and ensuring completion of various tasks would make up the entire priestly existence. Such a reductive conception of the identity of the ministry of the priest risks pushing their lives towards an emptiness which often comes to be filled by lifestyles not consonant with their very ministry. The priest who knows how to be the minister of Christ and his spouse will also find in prayer and study and in spiritual reading the strength necessary to overcome these dangers. And I think we see a lot of that these days. Priests who just see being a priest as sort of this function of going through the motions. They do confession for so many hours a week. They do the mass. And then that's just sort of the extent of really where they see their function. And that's not it. There's so much more to their ministry. Being a priest is bigger than just the mass and confession. Not to say that those aren't important, because those are core parts of their job, but there's a lot more to it than that. They need to study, they need to reflect, they need to pray, and then they need to lead their parish and their communities, because they're responsible for a community that's much bigger than their parish. It's not just exclusive to their parish. And they have a responsibility to that community for evangelizing and leading and converting. Another good point it makes. Preaching, therefore, cannot be reduced to the presentation of one's own thought, to the manifestation of personal experience, to simple explanations of a psychological, sociological, or humanitarian nature, nor can it excessively concentrate on rhetoric, so often found in mass communication. It concerns proclaiming a word which cannot be altered, because it has been entrusted to the church in order to protect, penetrate, and faithfully transmit it. There's another quote in here where it says, stirred by the apostle who exclaimed, "Woe to me if I preach not the gospel," and that was 1 Corinthians 9:16. He must know how to use all those means of communication which modern science and technology provide. So that part's actually saying that priests do actively need to use all technology that's available to them to preach the word and to get God's message out there. So be it Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or whatnot, priests are actually supposed to actively engage whatever social element he can in order to get the word out there. Another good quote, it is necessary to recall the irreplaceable value that the daily celebration of the Holy Mass has for the priest. Be it in the presence of other faithful or not, he must live it as a central moment of his day and of his daily ministry, fruit of a sincere desire and an occasion for a deep and effective encounter with Christ, and he must take the greatest care to celebrate it within intimate participation of the mind and heart. So, of the requirements in being a priest is just the sincere love of the Eucharist and of the Word and of Jesus, Jesus being the Word. And priests also need to have a devotion to the Blessed Virgin, it points out. It also talks about what priests wear. Priests aren't supposed to be going around dressed as civilians so that you can't distinguish them from just your next door neighbor or some Joe Schmo. They're supposed to dress distinctly. So even if they're not in a cassock, they're not supposed to be dressed in such a way that you have no idea they're a priest. Their attire should identify them one way or another as being a priest and setting themselves apart from everyone else. And that's actually a really important thing. I also noticed how in addressing the liturgy, it talked about how a priest is not to modify the liturgy in any way, not supposed to sort of bring his own personality or the culture into the Mass. He's supposed to stick with the liturgy as it's written. And the priest then, in order to place at the service of the Eucharistic celebration all of his gifts and to render it vivifying in the participation of the faithful, must follow the rite established in the liturgical books approved by the competent authority without adding, removing, or changing anything. And the funny thing is when I was in my 20s, I knew of a priest who every time he was doing the consecration, and then after the consecration, when he would lift up the Eucharist and say, "Behold the Lamb of God," and then he would sort of somehow bring in part of his homily into that moment. And all of a sudden you'd be yanked out of looking at Jesus thinking, oh yeah, about his homily, just being pulled right out of that moment of being presented Jesus. And at the time I thought, that's an interesting way to tie it in. Now, however, being much more mature in my faith, I realize the narcissism in that and how that was highly inappropriate. He was not supposed to be doing that because the Mass isn't about him. It's about Jesus. The consecration isn't about him. He's being in persona Christi, turning with his consecrated hands that bread into Jesus. And so to pull us out of that moment of adoring Jesus to think about him, it wasn't about him and he had no reason to do it and he had no business doing it. That goes to what I was talking about, the priest that would change things up after he elevated the host and said, "Behold the Lamb of God." And they would go into some sort of reflection on his homily. That wasn't okay and he wasn't supposed to be doing that. And so it's funny, the things that I've learned studying my faith and maturing in my faith and realizing that things I thought were kind of interesting, and I had no reason to know better at the time because he was the one responsible for educating and he was doing it wrong. And so he took the focus off of Jesus and put it on him. And that makes for kind of a bad priest, really. It also talks about the various duties of a priest, and one of which is the Liturgy of the Hours. And here it says, therefore, whether it be in communal or individual celebration, the Liturgy of the Hours must never be reduced to a mere duty of mechanically performing a simple and lukewarm reading without the necessary attention to the text's meaning. Because priests are every day supposed to be doing the Liturgy of the Hours, which means several times a day they're praying these things. And I remember there was a parish I belonged to where I prayed the Liturgy of the Hours with the group, and the priest had an assistant there that did it for him. And I wonder now if he actually ever did the Liturgy of the Hours himself, which he was bound and required to do as a priest. But instead he had her doing them with the parishioners. So it's like, was he literally like saying, here, I'm going to assign you one of my responsibilities because he likes sleeping in, which is not right. It also talks about the sacrament of penance and reconciliation and how priests should be visibly participating in the sacrament. It's not just a matter of parishioners going to the priest and having confession. The priest needs to lead by example. He needs to be actively seen, going to confession. Hopefully there'd be another priest at that parish or another priest could come in, but the priest needs to be actively going to confession himself and setting the example. So it doesn't look like, he could do it privately, but he also needs to be seen by his parishioners going to confession. So the parishioners see the example being set for them of, it's not just them that needs to go to confession, but Father also has to go too. And regularly. Overall, this book, it has its table of the contents in the back. So it's kind of different that way. But of the things that it talks about the priesthood as a gift and who the priest is. And it really does a beautiful job of that. At first, it seems a little bit, interesting or complicated when you first start reading. You're like, okay, but what are the priest's responsibilities? But it has to set up the groundwork for you of who a priest is and why he's called. Because a priest needs to be called. A priest isn't just a person who goes, I think I want to become a priest, so I'm going to go do this. No, a priest is a person who is called by God. The man is called by God to go be the priest. It's not that the guy just goes, yeah, I think I'll go be a priest. That's what I want to do. And then goes and be a priest. You need to be called. It's not something done on your own gumption. But yeah, fantastic book. Highly recommend it. Like I said, I was really surprised by some of the footnotes and the amount of quotes in here that are just really phenomenal, that when I looked down, they were drawn from Vatican II. Vatican II of all places. They were drawn from Vatican II, which I would not have expected. There's quotes in there from St. Thomas Aquinas too, which are really good. So it's a surprisingly pricey book on Amazon. I think last I checked, it runs around $31 new. However, you can get it used for around like $13. I bought mine secondhand used, and when it showed up, it was in really great shape. It looks probably not as perfect shape now because I've been reading it and I tabbed it and stuff, and paperbacks can wear out a little faster than hardbacks. But I do highly recommend it. It was very good. It was nice to read. It's nice to actually read it and understand what the responsibilities of a priest are and what he's supposed to be doing. And no, that's not just all on us laity. That, the priest goes in, he does mass, he does confession, he gives us absolution. But outside of that, spreading the word is our job. It's not true. And it says so right in that book. It's the priest's job to lead us, to set us up with catechesis and Bible studies. So it's good to know. I mean, it's right there in that book. And I honestly wonder if there's some priests out there that have just never read it and don't actually know what their responsibilities are in leading the people, leading the flock. So I do highly recommend getting it. It's worth every dime. If you are looking at becoming a priest, or you have a child or a friend that is, it'd be a very good book for them to read so that they have some idea of what they're supposed to be going into. Because if you look at the example of some of the priests running around out there today, you might not know what their jobs and responsibilities are because they're not demonstrating them, they're not fulfilling them. Like I said, examples of priests who are actually doing what this book says they're supposed to: Father Altman, Father Richard Heilman, Father Bill Casey, Bishop Strickland. They're all doing a phenomenal job in doing exactly what that book says they're supposed to be doing, as opposed to missing the mark. So again, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it, especially if you made it this far. If you haven't yet, please click the subscribe button down below and then click the little bell to set up notifications. That way YouTube will let you know when I have new videos up. And if you like this video, please click the like button below. I appreciate that as well. All of it's completely free, so it won't cost you a dime to click subscribe or like, and it really helps my channel, and it tells YouTube that I make good videos and recommend them to other people. And I do plan on getting some more review videos up. It'll just probably be a little while. And I'll probably also work on getting some more house cleaning, homemaking type videos up as well in the future, especially with nesting now. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.